A Texas death match, and Shivani scares some trick-or-treaters. What more could you want from 1993? I'm John Rentham with the retro review of WCW Halloween Havoc 1993. This pay-per-view was odd. The main event was really good. There were some other good matches during the show, but something felt very off. Now, WCW, as far as in-ring work, was honestly better than WWE. That's not to say that WWE didn't have great athletes, but Raw, was on the air at this point. Some of the matches were here and there, and the pay-per-views were hit and miss because they were still trying with the whole Lex Luger thing at this point, even though it was very obvious after SummerSlam 93 it wasn't going to work. That being said, WCW is separating from the NWA at this point, so they had the International Heavyweight Championship until they could figure out, all the stuff they were going to do with their World Heavyweight title situation. And honestly, Vader and Cactus Jack, had it not been for their match, they wouldn't have been able to, I wouldn't have been able to call this show any good at all. Because that was a bloody, violent match that, really capped off their feud in great fashion. But yeah, we have a Trick-or-Treaters, a home movie, if you will. Trick-or-Treaters talking about, we need to get home and watch Halloween Havoc. And then they want to go to the scary house to get some candy and be scared and everything. And Shivani greets them. And the girl asking the honest question, shouldn't you be at the pay-per-view? Well, I have a helicopter that'll take me. And Shivani acting very, very creepy during this whole thing. Now, I'm just saying on camera, because Shivani, as far as I understand, is one of the nicest guys you will meet in wrestling, but he just played a really good creep here because he was trying to scare the kids. He says, my wife's baking cookies. Why don't you come in and try some of my wife's cookies? He played a really good creep here. He says, the spin the wheel, make the deal match. He's talking about all the ghoulish match stipulations and stuff like that. And the kid, one particular kid, the one that tries to act tough but really isn't, is like, well, if you can't scare us, we're out of here. And then he removes his mask, and he's a scary type of creature and everything, and scaring the kids. The kids open the door, and then we cut right to the pay-per-view. So seemingly the house teleported, Zathura style, right to the arena, and then we start the pay-per-view proper, that is. I do like that Shivani was dressed like Jesse Ventura with the bow and the bald cap and everything, and I guess Ventura was apparently dressed like, New Orleans' #1 gynecologist, or Bourbon Street's #1 gynecologist. And then Bischoff is dressed as a Confederate soldier. Yeah, they still weren't quite out of the Southern wrestling roots, were they? So we have, oh boy, kid. They had Whoop, There It Is chants. Those definitely was 1993. And then they have a weird match that just, it was kind of playing off of what happened at Fall Brawl the previous month. It was Ice Train, Shockmaster, and Charlie Norris. I'm not really that familiar with. He was kind of a journeyman that got like a year and a half run in WCW, and then was mostly on the independents. Versus Harlem Heat, who were called Kane and Cole, not Booker and Stevie Ray. And the Equalizer, who was Dave Sullivan, who would later become Evad. All the stupid gimmicks they kept giving him. Not that he was really all that great, but when you give somebody a character like Evad, Dave Sullivan, Dave spelled backwards, it's not really going to fucking work. This was not good. They made Shockmaster a bumbling construction guy, and a bear hug drop by Shockmaster wins it. Shockmaster had won the match, the War Games match at Fall Brawl the previous month, and I forget which one it was. I think he got Booker T to give up, even though Booker T said he didn't give up, but this was not a particularly good, opening match. Crowd loved it, though. 6,000 people in like a 9,000 seat venue, so they, and New Orleans has a pretty passionate fan base for wrestling, so at least it had that. And there were some really, old school Southern wrestling fans that appreciated some of the matches later. Bischoff and Terry Taylor are talking about the Flair Rude match later, and Terry Taylor's going to be the outside official. He's not going to let anything bad happen. Paul Orndorff with the Assassin, Jody Hamilton, versus Ricky Steamboat. And this should have been better than it was. I think they would have been better if they had gone to the finish a few minutes before they did. Both these guys, world-class athletes at this time. Orndorff, even with his diminished physique because of the atrophy in his arm. And him and Steamboat cutting a pretty good pace here. Orndorff attacked early. We get a ramp spot. We get some good submission work. And then Steamboat was targeting the arm. And then he got more vicious. This went outside quite a bit. I'm actually amazed they didn't just make this an ODQ match, but they already had that going for the main event with the Texas Deathmatch stipulation. And the Assassin loads up his mask, headbutts Steamboat from behind, gives it to him from behind, in other words, and then Orndorff wins by a countout. So it was what it was. And then Lord Steven Regal with Sir William versus Davey Boy Smith. British Bulldog had a very odd run, or a series of runs in WCW. He had this run, that ended right after, 1993, I think right at the end of 93. And then you had the other run that happened from 97 to, I want to say, just sometime in 98, when the Fall Brawl trapdoor incident. Great idea there, Bischoff, or whoever the fuck came up with it for the Warrior. Yeah, let's have the Warrior appear through trapdoor. Not tell anybody about the trapdoor thing. And then, just have everybody get injured. I mean, I think Bulldog was the only one, but I wouldn't be surprised if other people suffered injuries because nobody told them a fucking trapdoor was there. Anyway, this match should have been better. Now, it had a lot of submission wrestling, as you would expect with the Regal match, and Bulldog did show off. When Bulldog was motivated, he was fucking tremendous. It went to time limit draw. It was what it was. Bulldog almost got him, but didn't quite. The TV championship is always featured pretty well, but there are some times where the time limit stipulation, the whole thing, 15-minute time limit draw, it would work to the advantage of continuing a feud, and then sometimes it was just drawing out a match just to fill time. That's kind of what it felt like here. Then spin the wheel, make the deal. It lands on Texas Deathmatch. Now we get Dustin Rhodes versus Stunning Steve Austin U.S. Championship. Finally, something good. It's not that it's not the TV Championship match was bad, but it just didn't feel like the pay-per-view kicked into gear until we got to this, because even Orndorff and Steamboat had that dodgy finish and went about 20 minutes when it probably should have gone only 15. This was great, great stuff, well-paced, great wrestling, mixed with some good strikes. Austin hurting his knee, but maybe not hurting his knee, trying to fake him out and everything. And we get a 3 count later where, the referee would see that Austin was using the ropes, so he would call it off even though he counted 3. Excuse me. And then we get the most devastating maneuver in all professional wrestling, surprise roll-up, 1, 2, 3. And Dustin Rhodes would retain the U.S. Championship until Starrcade 93, when he would lose 2 straight falls in the 2 out of 3 falls match, where Stunning Steve Austin would win the U.S. title and hold it until sometime in the summer of 94, when he would face off against Ricky Steamboat. And then, Dustin got cracked with the belt afterwards, which meant the feud would continue. And then we get recaps of Bagwell and Scorpio being the Nasty Boys for the tag titles the previous night. They had taped so much WCW Saturday Night by this point that I think, honestly, that match probably happened a month before, because they would just tape a whole bunch of stuff and get it in the can, but they treated it like it was last night, because they would literally tape, I think, like 10, 12 weeks of television. I think maybe 8 to 12 weeks of television, and just put the shows together and everything, which kind of made sense, but it was really difficult when they were doing it for pay-per-view. Oh, just don't come out with the belts, but we'll just voice it over and say that you got the belts. To be fair, though, it was a good cost-cutting measure, and Disney MGM Studios was a good location. They didn't have to pay any, building fees. Like, they would get paid to feature the show there, and they could definitely cut costs. It was a smart decision by Bischoff. And then the Nasty Boys of Missy Hyatt versus Bagwell and Scorpio with Teddy Long. Well, basically what this came down to is Bagwell and Scorpio lost after Scorpio got hit with a boot and Knobbs topped him 1, 2, 3. Not a bad match, but not a great match. Bagwell, I don't understand why he was featured in WCW for so long when he really wasn't all that good outside of tag matches. And then Sid is with Rob Parker being interviewed by Eric Bischoff. Sid says he will kill Sting on pay-per-view. That's basically what he ended up saying. Sid with Rob Parker versus Sting, rematch of Halloween Havoc 1990. Thankfully, a lot better. No double Stings here. No Barry Windham playing Sting. That was a bit odd. That was a fun retro review. You can check that out on the channel if you'd like. Fast-paced at first. They go outside. They come back, to the guardrail. They're doing some good stuff here. Then it slows down and becomes a typical Sid match. Now, I want to say I really do like Sid Vicious. As far as an in-ring performer, he looked great. Do I admit that he was limited? Absolutely, he was fucking limited. Do I admit that maybe he should have committed a little bit more? Yes. But also, if you featured him too much, he would be exposed as somebody that could only do so much. He had that physical charisma, though. If you wanted to design a wrestler, you'd want him to look like Sid, especially if he was a big man. We had 2 splashes from Sting, and then Rob Parker is all blinded after a spot. He's trying to hold a boot, and he ends up accidentally holding Sid's boot. That doesn't quite lead to a 3 count, and then Sting hits the most devastating maneuver in all of professional wrestling, surprise roll-up, 1, 2, 3. And Sting proves that he's the franchise of WCW. That's what this was about. And then Flair with Fifi, who I think is his current wife now, if I recall correctly, versus Rick Rude, WCW International Heavyweight Championship. Terry Taylor is the outside referee, Randy Anderson is the inside referee. The pace was good as expected. There was a bad spill outside, which unfortunately would be the type of spill that would lead to Rick Rude suffering a back injury a number of months later that would end his career. And I mean, he would still make appearances as, like a manager and stuff like that afterwards, but there were rumors he would train for a comeback, but he had a Lloyd's of London insurance policy he'd have to pay back, and nobody was willing to help him. To be fair, I totally get it. But good groundwork by both. Rude awakening by Flair. Flair uses Rude's illegal foreign object, not the international object. And Terry Taylor stops the count because Randy Anderson's hitting his leg and saying, hey, he used that, and the match is called off. Crowd's chanting bullshit. Rude tries to carry away Fifi. Flair tries to attack him to continue this feud. Even though I don't think this feud continued, because it would lead to Flair facing Vader for the WCW Championship at Starrcade 93 after Sid violently scissored Arn Anderson a little bit too much, and if you know, you know. And that would lead to Sid being ousted from company. Cactus Jack with Vader, versus Vader with Harley Race. Texas Death Match. All I'm going to say about this is, one, it was very bloody, especially for 1993 WCW. It was hard hitting. This was a great way to cap off their feud. Chairs, using the grave sites. They were there. There was this one unfortunate line from Tony Schiavone, and that was the back then. But said, would you look at that shot? Vader climbing out of his own grave. Not. I mean, it's just really sad how Vader passed away, especially before he could be inducted in WWE Hall of Fame like he should have been. But Cactus hit Vader with a cactus, which was kind of funny. An elbow off the stage. A lot of pinfalls, but you had to answer the 10 count after the 30-second rest period. And both men were down on the stage after a chair shot to the head, and then a DDT from Cactus Jack, where his head would collide with the chair. Taser to Cactus's leg. Vader would win. And that was it right there. And it was a great way to cap it off. So that's all I got to say about the pay-per-view. Certainly not that bad. The main event basically saved it, as well as a couple other matches. Agree, disagree with what I said? Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Rickland. I'll see you soon.